Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. This is day 42 of Russia's incursion into the Ukraine. As promised before in many previous episodes, today's actually going to be a rather short episode, mainly because media coverage has tapered off quite a bit. And maybe it's just because not a whole lot happened, which is typical when the aggressor is on the retreat, actually. The fallout of the Russian pullout of the northern flank of Ukraine it's a twofold situation. So you have the Iron Curtain being pulled away from their occupied territory. And what it has done, it has exposed the dark and evil underbelly of war. So the world is being shocked and appalled by what they've seen by Russian aggression in the last 48 hours. And as of this morning, we were informed that what you have seen in Bucha is only the beginning, because it's only the first of many cities and villages that this has happened to. If you're in the Donbass region, you've probably witnessed this long before Bucha. And because the Russians are in pretty commanding control of the southeastern part of the country, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Donbass that we're not aware of yet. And it's only going to get worse. And I think the stories of what's going on in that region are going to become more frequent and more abhorrent and more devastating for the average person to witness, I guess. Anyway, like I said, kind of a shorter show, very limited stories. I've got captions and photos and everything. I also have a limited number of people. I did receive a viewer criticism of yesterday's show where we tended to sort of tangent off a bit off schedule or off topic, which it wasn't my intention. The conversation was good, it just didn't fit the theme of the show. And I think I might have ran a few people off because of it. But I told them, I said, listen, that theme of this show is specific to this war. If you can't really contribute to it, it's no hard feelings. I have another show that I typically do on the weekends, and you're more than welcome to come in and we can talk about just about anything and everything. So there is that. But my diehard is here, so let me go ahead and pull him in. You know him as Scott P79, and there he is. So good evening to you. And since I don't have very many stories, I do want to share something personal. My birthday's a week from today, and my family life is very unorthodox. Plus, I let them stay with me. Plus, one of them has dementia. So, things are weird. Christmas was non-existent. My birthday will probably be non-existent in this house as well. So, knowing that, I went ahead and bought myself an early birthday present, because it's probably going to take a week to get here anyway. So initially, I had wanted to buy an RPK, but they're not available right now, so I can't buy one. And I figure by the time they do come back in stock, I'll have the money to buy it again anyway, so that's cool. So then the plan was to buy a WBP Fox, which is a Polish AK, because I'm sort of on an AK kick right now, thanks to a couple of people who will remain unnamed. Scott, Jaime, Scott, fuckers. Anyway, I do have my KP9, which is sort of a bitch-ass clone, and every time I say bitch-ass, I think of the word bitch-ass. Anyway, so I have a bitch-ass clone, and I also have the AKP, which is sort of like a Crink, but in 7.6239, because that's what I wanted. I wanted it to look like the Bin Laden rifle, but I'm kind of old school when it comes to caliber, so I went with 7.62 39. And so far, I've got no complaints with that, aside from the finish of the furniture, which was a little thin, but it's okay. And then today, instead of buying the WBP Fox, because apparently none are in stock, uh, I went ahead and bought another PSA AK. I bought the GF4. If you don't know what the GF is it's Generation Forged 4th Gen. So I've got one of their latest and greatest. The only difference between the 4 and the 5 is the GF5 is the FN Cold Hammer Forged barrel. The GF4 is PSA's in-house Cold Hammer Forged chrome lined barrel. And I got the one with the imitation Bakelite furniture because I'm kind of old-fashioned when it comes to AKs. I like the look of the older ones. That's not to say that I'm still going to buy the WBP Fox eventually. And I think what I'll do with that one is I'm going to go nuts and go tactical with that. Like, if it's not Zenico furniture, I'm going to go with, like, TSS, Texas Shooter Supply. They make a very good version themselves. And the guy who designed it actually, I don't know if he worked for Zenico, but he's intimately familiar with Zenico. Like, I think he did work for him at one point. So I'll probably go with their stuff, if not Zenico. Because right now, if you ordered anything from Zenitco, you're not getting it. If you ordered anything from Ivan the Bear Tactical, chances are you're probably not going to get it either. So, there's that. So yeah, for a guy who bought a AKP, a Python, and an Anaconda all within the first 8 weeks of the year, and then said, okay, I'm done for the year, and then turned around and is buying 3 more AKs, whatever. It's an expensive year. 2022 is expensive. Plus, I just bought what was that thing called, Scott? The mount that I just bought?
Oh, fuck, drawing a blank on it.
I bought what the hell's the name of it? You got one.
Yeah, but I'd have to get up to look at it.
Anyway, uh, shit. So I bought the side mount, and then I bought a Sig Romeo and Juliet setup for it. So we got all those, and then I bought 200 rounds of Norma 7.62 39 brass cased ammo today, also. So today was expensive, and apparently I have a fellow Korean here today. So I know none of y'all can understand the Cyrillics, but you don't see them on the screen. But you would know him as Blue Phoenix from Gun Channels of old. So, that being said, you're welcome to stay here, but just make sure you stick to subject today because it's the war chat. So, just so you know. All right, so let me pull up my list of stuff, and I suspect today we will get it down to an hour, which is fine. If you didn't know yesterday, there was a public gathering for the DNC that involved Barack Obama. And the event, if you are left-leaning, was probably a great success and a very jovial event. But if you are a human being and you're normal, or if you lean towards the right, you saw it for the pathetic, tragic circus that it was. Because what you would have witnessed is the president was left alone at his own gathering. Nobody would speak to him, and he wandered around aimlessly looking for a conversation that nobody was willing to raise to him. It was tragic. And essentially what it was the entire party was basically saying, you don't matter. And everyone was hovering around Barack Obama, including Biden's own vice president, because she needs the optics. Again, tragic. That being said, nothing of use came out of it. Just bad jokes and cliches. No announcements were made. Nothing of value was gained or lost. That being said, the media in the Ukraine had released a story, which I didn't put in today's timeline, but they had released several stories, and this is sort of an amalgamation of all the stories that I had seen, that what we had witnessed this weekend in uh, Bucha, which is a little village northwest of this capital city of Kyiv,
Bumper road.
that is the tip of the iceberg of atrocities. This is just the beginning of the end of atrocities that the West will be able to see because of the Russian retreat. What we're going to see in the coming days and weeks, months, and possibly years, if we were to believe that idiot General Milley, is everything that's going on in the Donbass region right now is far worse because they have a stronger hold on the region. They have also brought in mobile crematoriums to burn all evidence of their atrocities, which I think I do have a story for today, which is why I have that picture for today's war room of body bags in cemeteries and things like that, because that's the reality of the situation, what you see there. And I don't have a slideshow for you today because I think you guys have seen enough to realize that it's living in hell. There was also a special operator or spec ops veteran who was interviewed today on, I think the show was called Outnumbered. That's with Harris Faulkner from Fox News. And truth be told, what he said this morning in his interview was spot on, but it was very discouraging at the same time. And essentially what he was saying was what we were all kind of thinking. There are people who are willing to volunteer to serve and fight for the Ukrainian army. I have a friend who volunteered. He went to the Ukrainian embassy in New York, and in 48 hours he was on a plane, and he is in theater. He has sent me several pictures, a couple of which you saw yesterday, that have also been shared with news outlets, so I suspect you'll see the same pictures in your local news either today or in the future, because he's just sharing with everybody. And he's still there. And he said he's not leaving, not until this is over, or he's dead, whatever comes first. Pretty noble, but the spec ops guy, the veteran that's there, he's essentially taking these volunteers in, kind of giving them a lay of the land, and helping coordinate where to put them or who to send them to from the Ukrainian military. And what he had said this morning in his interview was, there are too many people who are volunteering, getting here, and realizing how bad it really is, and then wanting to go home after 2 or 3 days. The problem with that is the Ukrainian military's equipment and logistics outfit is so stretched thin that these volunteers are being given equipment that would be better served to a more committed soldier or a more committed volunteer. And that is a waste of resources and time. And they have to stop what they're doing to exfil people. He's right. And what he had said is unless you really know what you think you're getting into, or unless you have a clue on what you're doing, stop coming. This isn't Call of Duty. Stay home, because this is way over your league. He was right. It's a bitter pill for most people to swallow. There was a lot of LARPs running around, probably on YouTube, probably on social media, going, I would go there and totally kick ass. And then they get there and they shit their pants. And they're like, I need out of here. I can't handle this. Where's my safe space? Which is why I didn't volunteer. Because number one, I'm too old. Number two, what good would I be? But, if the time ever comes and they need volunteers or there's a draft or something, then I'll do my part. I'll just make ammo or be a garrison guard or some shit. Whatever I can do. But there's a reason why I'm still here doing this instead of saying I'm reporting live from the Ukraine. Because, let's be honest, if I was in Ukraine right now, the only thing I would do is I would try to get on Alex Hogan's security detail, because that woman is gorgeous and she needs to stay alive. That being said,
I
all
figured
tan-
you'd be trying to hook up with the Klitschko brothers.
well, no, I mean, there's a girl who's a news broadcaster for Fox. Her name's Alex Hogan, and she is. Mm, mm, mm,
Are,
mm,
are,
mm.
are we in the war room? I mean,
Yes.
are we in the show?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to change the permissions of the channel because if you don't know why you're in here. Anyway, all right. All tangenting aside, sorry. I just wanted to get that all out of the way in the first 15 minutes or whatnot. He bailed.
Yep.
He's like, no, I don't want to do this. I can't handle this. Anyway, so yes, today is day 42. Yes, today I did update the scroller. Everything is in the right place and working. It is all correct this time. And the gains between yesterday and today are very few. For instance, like KIA, wounded, things like that, it was 100. Most of the other categories have remained unchanged. I think a couple of extra UAVs. I think 7 to 10 tanks and a couple of planes. But it was more or less a slow day. Because right now, the Russians are pulled out. If you remember the battle map from yesterday, the entire northern flank is pretty much gone. They've left. All the gains were retaken, or all the land was retaken by the Ukrainian military. So they left it, more or less. The idea of a counterattack right now would be perfect. And I was going to post one of the last stories of the day about the window of opportunity that the Ukrainian military has at this very moment and how it should be utilized and maximized. But it probably won't be because of logistics and lack of equipment, and the soldiers need a break too. They need a breather. They've been fighting for 42 days straight, so they probably need a bit of a break as well. But there's an opportunity right now, and it's going to be squandered because you got the Russian military that are currently traversing Belarus back into Russia to go do an end around to come back to the Donbass region. And it's like, if you were the Ukrainian military, you should be walking right into Belarus and killing every soldier you see on the way. Because they're co-conspirators. This is a perfect chance to do that. They're tired, they're on the retreat, they're weak, they're unarmed or disarmed or very weakly armed. This is where you make gains. And I don't think they're going to do it. Maybe because they don't want to look like warmongers themselves. You know what I mean? Like, no, we're just going to take our country back and be content with that. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. I don't know Ukrainian war psychology right now. But if there was a chance to seize the moment, this is what Zelensky should be doing. But I don't know I'm not in his head. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the stories because my goal is to try to get you guys out of here in the next 40 minutes to make it an hour-long show just because it was a slow news day and let you go about your lives. So, having a 2-hour show is not bad. It's just if I can try not to drag this out, we're going to try not to. Also, good evening to Shady Hill and Terry Scher. And I'm sure, folks usually tend to file in later in the show, like Ellis and all them. So that's cool too. Plus, I don't know who's on right now. And there's a slew of Wanamaker hangover post-mortem shows going on, I'm sure. Which I've already heard plenty of things about Wanamaker this year, and I'm kind of disappointed in it, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to going. But whatever. Anyway, first story of the day. Let's go ahead and get this started. Here's your photo. Yeah, more body bags. Sorry. It's a different angle. This came 20 minutes after midnight, which is about 7:20 in the morning in Ukraine. So this is the early morning hours, which is why it looks so dark and foggy and bleh. U.S. and its allies plan to pile additional sanctions on Russia Wednesday, today, including banning any new investments in the country. I didn't type that right, I'm sorry. Including banning any new investments in the country because of evidence Russia is intentionally killing civilians in Bucha and other Ukrainian cities, the White House announced Tuesday night. Among the other measures being taken against Russia are greater sanctions on its financial institutions and state-owned enterprises, and sanctions on government officials and their family members, according to the White House press secretary Jen Psaki, who is also on her way out. The goal is to force them to make a choice, she said. The biggest part of our objective here is to deplete the resources that Putin has to continue his war against Ukraine. The U.S. Treasury Department also plans to block Russia from using U.S. dollars to make any and all debt payments. So they still think that making things expensive in the future will stop the bloodshed now, even though the soldiers who are in theater now already have the guns, the tanks, the grenades, the missiles, and the bullets they need to inflict maximum carnage on the Ukrainian populace. Right. Okay. Moving right along. A couple hours later, I got to take a bit of a nap because Betty let me have a nap, and she's asleep right now next to me. She's my Yorkie. 3:27 a.m. Central Standard Time, which would have been about 10:27 Ukrainian time in the morning. And I have this photo, which was an update from the British Ministry of Defense, who's actually quite a good source of intel because they've got eyes and ears on the ground. The humanitarian crisis in the besieged city of Mariupol is, quote, worsening as Russia continues to shell it. UK Defense Ministry said in a Wednesday morning update. Most of the 160,000 remaining residents have no light, no communication, no medicine, no heat, and no water. Russian forces have also prevented humanitarian access, likely to pressure defenders to surrender. The Russians have had a blockade in and out of Mariupol for the Red Cross, for a convoy of privately contracted coach buses to exfil people out of the area. They're not letting anyone in, and they're not letting anyone out. And do remember, Mariupol was once a city of nearly 500,000 people. Now there's 160,000 and dwindling out of starvation or executions or hit squads and murders. There's nothing left for the Russians to, quote, shell, because 95% of the city has already been destroyed. If you've ever seen, there's two versions of the movie called Stalingrad. One came out, I think, in 1993 or 98, and then the other one came out in 2003 or 2008. I remember they were 10 years apart, and they're two different perspectives of the same battle. But the remnants of the city of Stalingrad, there was more there standing than in Mariupol today. And yet they're still attacking it. It's like bombing ruins to make them even more ruined. There's nothing left. Why do you keep attacking it? Anyway.
Because they're not attacking the place, they're attacking the people.
They're attacking the place to break the spirit of the people. Yeah, for sure. All right, so moving right along. About an hour later, about 11:30 in the morning over there, and I have this photo, which is a tweet from Dmytro Kuleba. He is the Ukrainian foreign minister, and he said that he appreciated the strengthening of the European Union's fifth sanctions package Wednesday morning. but added that a Russian oil embargo and de-swifting all Russian banks would be necessary extra steps to stop Vladimir Putin's war. Difficult times require difficult decisions. He's correct. The thing is all the sanctions that have been levied against Russia right now haven't stopped the flow of revenue to Russia because their biggest export is oil and energy and natural gas. And if you look at the sanctions packages and the bans, it doesn't affect almost any of those. They're still making billions daily on energy sales that are still going through pipelines into the very European countries who are denouncing the war. Okay. On top of that, you have countries like India, who are what you would consider an emerging power. You know, they were once a few very rich people ruling an entire population of incredibly poor people, right? They would be what you would consider second world, not third world, second world. Well, now they're emerging as a first world power. They have a very large and blooming upper class, and they have an incredibly quickly growing middle class now. So they're becoming a force on the geopolitical stage in terms of clout, like financial and military clout. They have a presence now. That presence requires a lot of energy. They are buying Russian oil at a heavy discount because it's like if you're an emerging power and you need oil and you need natural gas and you need energy and the Russians are willing to sell it to you for pennies on the dollar compared to what it's actually worth, technically you'd be a fool not to take up the offer. But then again, you will be looked down upon by the rest of the civilized world because you're bankrolling the enemy. It's a really strange position to be in if you're India. Like you can't really fault them for it, but you can't really pat them on the head for doing it either. You're just like, you stay over there. You're the obscure uncle in the photo for a while. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so about another hour goes by, but I'm going to take you further east, far east. It is 6:32 p.m. in Beijing. China on Wednesday called the images that appeared to show civilians in Bucha and other Ukrainian cities intentionally killed deeply disturbing and called for an immediate investigation. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said Wednesday that China supports all initiatives and measures conducive to alleviating the humanitarian crisis in the country and is ready to continue to work together with the international community to prevent any harm to the civilian population. Word salad. Beijing has been reluctant to criticize their ally Russia over the war and didn't actually blame Russia for the killings Wednesday. India, which has also avoided criticizing Russia over the invasion, said it unequivocally condemned the situation in Bucha. So what you have is you have two countries, one who's an ally and one who is a dependent on their energy. And they're both looking at this picture going, "This is horrible. We have to do something about this." But they won't say whose fault it is. It's a very careful PR game that they're playing. Somebody's going to call them out eventually. Rose McGowan or something. I don't know. Sean Penn. But yeah. This is horrible. We should do something about this. What should we do? I don't know. Maybe we should identify who started it first. We know who started it. Shh. Don't say the quiet part out loud. Okay, India. If you say so. Anyway, moving on. This was a really cool bit of news because they're the first. And here's the photo. And you got to admit, that's a sexy looking tank. 1:33 p.m. Ukrainian, and Czech Republic time. The Czech Republic has sent a shipment of T-72 tanks and BVP-1 infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. The reported delivery of tanks is the first of its kind among any of the NATO member countries. Video posted online by a Czech television channel purportedly showed a train carrying 5 of each of these vehicles, only the start of their delivery shipments heading towards the Ukraine. It took the Czechs to stand up and be first. It makes you kind of wonder if anyone else is following this example. The answer is yes. Romania, Bulgaria, I think the Czech Republic, and I think there's one other country. They all submitted bids to the United States yesterday and today for an immediate order of F-16 fighter planes. All of them. They all did. They were like, yo, we want these now. Here's a check. Now, why did they do that? Number one, that's going to kickstart the American military complex. That's jobs. That's putting people to work. That is maintaining the peace and the NATO status quo. That's all positives for us. Plus, we make a bit of money on the side because they're paying for these things. We're not giving them to them, they're buying them. That's the first positive. But then you have to ask, why did they all do that? If you look at their inventory, they have T-72 tanks. They have BVP-1s. They have BMPs. They have S-300 and S-400 missile systems. They have MiG-29s. They're fixing to send their entire inventory over to Ukraine. They have chosen a side. Now they're placing orders to backfill their inventory with the standard NATO equipment. They're getting rid of their surplus, giving it to the Ukrainians who are familiar with the equipment, which is a thing that they have to have right now. And then they're backfilling with F-16s. Now, there was an outfit in Ukraine before this war really kicked off who were training Ukrainian pilots on the familiarity of the F-16's systems, which means we were preparing them for F-16s as well. But for now, these other countries are giving up their MiGs and their T-72 tanks because they're fixing to update their inventory. So they get to help Ukrainians. We get to build all shiny new weapons to sell to them, which makes our industry get a boost. This is a good thing. And at the end of the day, we're still technically not directly involved in the war, which is what the administration is struggling to do. Despite many people screaming, if we just get involved now, we can put this to bed a whole lot sooner before this gets a whole lot worse. People like me think that. This is a good thing. Like, good on you, Czech Republic. Somebody had to be first. Thank you for doing it. Because now this will hopefully motivate other nations who have been hesitant to act to finally act. They're starting to see this for what it is. This is a world war. How do you end it? Well, give them the tools to help end it faster, and maybe we won't have to get involved. Let's arm them all before they all get killed off, and then somebody else has to go fight the war for them because there's none of them left. Pretty novel concept, isn't it? Moving right along. Unless do you guys have an opinion on this? You guys are cool with this so far?
Yeah. What was I gonna talk about? Yeah, like, well, yeah, give them weapons to like actually win this war long term. Like, don't just like give them like a couple thousand ATGMs to like erode Russian capability.
Correct.
The Ukrainians, in the long term, they will mobilize far more men than Russia could ever bring to the table. Russia can't bring in conscripts, and Ukraine is mobilizing hundreds of thousands of new men. So, like, if if NATO gives like 1% of their military equipment to Ukraine, like what Zelensky says,
Mm.
and if Ukraine manages to train another 250,000 men, that's like that's a half million man army, and the Russians, they only have like 200,000. So yeah,
Less than that, but yeah, I know what I see where you're going with this.
yeah, like Russia may be the bigger nation, but they can't bring enough manpower.
To bear, you're right. They're the bigger physical nation, but they're the smaller military right now. Like the only thing that they've had so far that has stopped the world from actually getting involved and putting an end to this quickly is the threat of the nuclear option. That's the only reason. If Russia didn't have nuclear weapons, this war would have been over in 2 weeks. Because they wouldn't have a trump card. And then the United Nations would have just went in balls deep. You're getting lectured, aren't you? Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Let's see, where am I at? Oh, okay. Now, this wasn't a story that I was really planning on sharing, but it is kind of interesting. Here's the photo. 1:34 p.m., Bucharest, Romania. This is still before my alarm clock went off, by the way. A man died in Romania after deliberately crashing his car Wednesday through the gates of the Russian embassy there. Bucharest police said around 6 a.m. the car had left the road and hit the fence of a diplomatic mission. The driver died, and it took the intervention of fellow firefighters to put out the fire in their car. They never did release the person's identity. Local authorities are now investigating the images that show the vehicle being towed away from the scene. So, the guy crashes through the gate into the embassy. Do you honestly think the car burst into flames by itself? It's an embassy. An embassy is a foreign country's soil, which means it's defended by soldiers of that foreign country who probably lit that car up like Christmas and set it on fire because that's what Russians do.
Well, like people like took photos of the car and like not riddled with holes. So
Well,
Yeah, but you wouldn't really be able to tell after a fire.
no, you can see the holes, but the thing is they can just take pictures of the side that didn't have the holes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking into this, but it's like coincidentally a car crashes through the gates of a Russian embassy. Right. Okay. Is this the first of many accidents at Russian embassies? Just a thought. Sorry. I'm reaching for that one, I know. All right, anyway, also around the same time, 1:30-ish in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the Irish Parliament, accused the Russian military of weaponizing hunger as they are, quote, destroying things that are sustaining human livelihoods, including food storage depots, and, quote, putting mines into the farmers' fields. For them, hunger is also a weapon against ordinary people, adding that Russia is deliberately provoking a food crisis in Ukraine, a major global producer of staples such as wheat and sunflower oil. Now, think of the gravity of why he mentioned this. Every time Zelensky speaks to a foreign parliament or a congress or a monarchy or whatever, right? Any nation he speaks to, he always finds a relevant metaphor that the people of that particular country can relate to and nod their head and
Well,
go,
I haven't thought it that way. Yeah, like the fucking potato famine.
exactly. See, I didn't even have to tell you. You knew exactly where I was going with this. Good on you. When he talked to the Irish, he mentioned the Irish famine. When he talked to the United States, he hearkened back to MLK and John F. Kennedy and the Cold War and Ronald Reagan. He reaches out and touches the hearts of the nation he's speaking to with references that nation can connect with because it happened to them. This is why he's one of the finest leaders in history right now. There's a saying that anyone can be a leader of a nation, but you're not the leader of your people until you are tested, right? And nobody thought this guy would be like this because he was an actor and a dancer and a comedian, right? They just thought, oh, he's probably just, it's a PR thing. This guy is a patriot and he's dedicated and he's educated and he's passionate about his country and the survival of his people. And it took this event to show the world how truly great he actually is. Because most of us were just like, who the hell is this guy, right? We've gotten to learn more about this man in 42 days than we knew in the last 45 years of his life. It's pretty incredible. Who's he going to talk to next? India? I think he's already talked to India. He's already talked to Australia. He's already talked to the Dutch. When he was finished talking to the Dutch instantly sent over, it was 300 javelins and 200 Panzerfaust 3s. He moved those people to move all that equipment overnight after his speech. There were videos of them palleting cargo planes and sending them straight to Poland and driving them across the border the day after his speech. He motivates people. So how come he hasn't motivated the UN? Kind of makes you wonder. Let's move on. So, also around the same time, if you read the description of the video today, you probably saw me say that this was the stupidest idea ever conceived. European Council President Charles Michel said Wednesday that granting asylum to Russian military deserters is, quote, a valuable idea that should be pursued. If you want no part in killing your Ukrainian brothers and sisters, if you don't want to be a criminal, drop your weapons, stop fighting, and leave the battlefield. Michel, who represents the bloc's government, said this in a message to Russian soldiers. The idea that EU member countries should think about ways of offering asylum to Russian soldiers willing to desert Ukraine battlefields has previously been circulated by some of its lawmakers, according to the Associated Press. My response to what I had just read to you was, fuck no. Murderers will lie to escape persecution in the later stages of this war. If they wanted to desert their posts and seek asylum, it should have happened in the first 6 days of the war. We're at day 42. You're going to get multitudes of murderers playing stupid, dropping their fucking rank off their lapels, and going, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want no part of it. After they've already racked up a body count. No, it's too late for that. It's way too late for that. You are condemned to your fate if you are in that country and you are an invader. I'm sorry. You're fucked. If you wanted to stop this, you should have put a bullet in your commander's head. You should have laid down your arms The day they told you to cross into someone else's country, you should have been like, I'm not following this order. Because the infantry outnumbered the officer corps. They could have done that. They didn't. They didn't choose to. And I know I said this before. They're young conscripts and children, and they're scared. They're scared to death of their leadership. But eventually you're going to have to go, this is
They're
insane.
not conscripts.
Huh?
They're not conscripts.
There was 195,000 people were staged into this event before it kicked off. And then Putin just conscripted another 130,000 people. They're draftees. They're children. That was within the last, 10 days. He put in an order for 130,000 more conscripts out of Moscow and St. Petersburg. They are children now. He took an entire academy of military students and conscripted them. They are children. They are impressionable and stupid youth. They don't know long-term consequence yet. They don't realize the value of their own life and how fragile it is yet. This is why the militaries draft young people, because they don't know about object permanence, which is a very basic psychological concept. They don't know that yet. They're still thinking they're invincible. Shit, I thought I was invincible until I was 30. Nowadays, it's like I get up and my body reminds me, you ain't invincible. Aches and pains are the reminder that you are a finite thing, which is why people who join the military so much later in life either have a limited role or they're just not really into it because they know that they're not going to make it through it. But when you're young and you can drink all night and get half an hour's worth of sleep and get up and work a full day afterwards with no hangover because you're still physically capable, you're easily coerced because you're like, nah, you're invincible. I mean, look how much shit you took yesterday. You're gonna be fine, right? They pick that on purpose. Anyway, sorry, slightly tangenting. All right, let's move on. Let's see. That all was before I even woke up, wasn't it? Yeah, that was all around 6:30ish in the morning. So a couple hours later, my alarm finally does go off, and I slept through it. I got up half an hour after the alarm, and the first story I saw came out at 9:36 a.m. Eastern Time, D.C. Diplomats say that the U.S. and Ukraine will present to the UN tomorrow a proposal to suspend Russia from its Human Rights Council. The meeting of the UN General Assembly in New York will begin around 10 a.m. local time, and a two-thirds majority vote will be needed to suspend Russia from the council. Yesterday was when they talked about it. What did they do today? Why couldn't they vote on it today? Or were they still talking about it because there was no story saying that they were? Or did they just take a day off to mull it over? I don't know. But apparently tomorrow is when they vote on it. So there was like a day moratorium? They need a two-thirds majority to suspend Russia from the council. If this isn't a slam dunk of a vote, where only China, North Korea is not even in that, are they? If China and Russia are the only two who vote against it, and everyone else votes for it, if that's not the outcome, then fuck the UN. There's no point to having them. This should be a unanimous slam dunk vote. How are you going to allow a country to be part of a human rights council when they are killing, raping, and burning people in front of their children and executing people by tying their hands up with the very armbands they gave to them? How is that even a thing?
Are we talking about Russia or China? I forget.
Oh,
Well
I mean, the
done.
same thing applies to China too. Like they'll have a seat on.
No, he was
Human
doing that
Rights
as a joke.
Council while
I know exactly what he was doing. That was
stealing
satire.
organs and imprisoning millions of people.
Perfectly timed, too, by the way.
Very well placed, yes. Kudos. But yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Like tomorrow's vote, should be all for with 2 against. If India doesn't have the balls to vote against this, then India has no place at the table. Fuck off. Like, fuck off. Because this could be you next. Any country who has to vote for this tomorrow, they should be reminded that you could be next. And then maybe they'll understand the gravity of this situation. Like, India should be scared shitless. They share a border with Russia.
India? India doesn't share a border with Russia.
Well, they're near a border. They're near Russia enough to be invaded by them.
Well, Kazakhstan is in the middle, and Kazakhstan.
All the Istans are Diet Russia, aren't they? At least that's what they keep saying. They're Diet Russia. Russia plus P, minus P, whatever you want to call it. I know what you're saying, though.
I mean, like, at this point, India pretty much has, like, as much equipment as Russia does, and has, like, many times the personnel.
They're still
Just like
building
active
their military, though. They're still building how do I call this? They're still building a domestically produced aircraft carrier. They're still building their navy. They're still building their infantry and military and their armored units. They're still buying jets, many of which are Russian jets, if I'm not mistaken. What they're trying to do is they're trying to continue to build up their defenses before they have to need to use them without offending the very belligerent nation that they're afraid of, who is also feeding them their energy supply. That's why they're doing what they're doing. That's exactly why they're doing what they're doing. They know that the hand that's feeding them is also going to be the hand that bitch slaps them someday. And they're like, we got to play this carefully. We got to quietly build up our defenses without offending the hand that feeds us. Because those are the guys we're actually building up the defenses for. Because we're afraid they're going to come after us eventually. That's what it is. Like, fucking Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder can see that coming. And one of them's dead. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see. Around the same time, but we're going to travel across the world again. And we're going to Moscow. 3:37 p.m.-ish, Moscow. Russian lawmakers on Wednesday adopted a bill to impose fines on anyone who equates the role of the Soviet Union. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I read that wrong. Impose fines on anyone who equates the role the Soviet Union played in World War II to Nazi Germany, a position it claims is necessary to counter slander by Baltic nations. In the third and final reading of a bill first introduced 2 days before Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, fines and prison sentences were attached to a 2021 law that banned language associating actions by the USSR with Adolf Hitler's Germany. The bill bans comments from the public sphere, the internet, or by media outlets that draw parallels between the goals, decisions, and actions by Soviet leadership under Joseph Stalin and military actions taken under Nazi Germany. The denial of the decisive role that the USSR played in defeating Hitler is also prohibited. They're setting up the table to ban anything that ties Russia today to Nazism of yesterday. Why would they do that? Do they think that maybe because they are behaving like the very enemy that they fought against? And people are starting to connect the dots? Maybe? Maybe? Or could it be that they have, I don't know, a privately funded paramilitary group that's named after a German composer and who's led by a neo-Nazi Russian? Could that have anything to do with it?
Might I point out that German composer was a anti-Semite?
Yeah. Wagner? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time.
Should it is maybe that's what it is? I mean, Putin's a liberal, isn't he? He's like the worst kind of far left liberal because it's page 1 of the DNC playbook. Preemptively accuse the other side of which you're guilty of first.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got neo-Nazi Russians. That is an oxymoron within itself, first of all. He's got them. He bought them. He employs them. And yet he's invading a sovereign nation saying that they're the Nazis. He's saying that they have committed genocide, despite the fact that he has just slaughtered half the country in various cities, or displaced them via massacre. Like, what is he smoking? Because I want some of it. I want to be that disillusioned with the world. Because then maybe I'll think AOC's pleasant to look at. I don't know. She's not. She's got those funky-ass teeth like that old cartoon, The Max. I know some of you know what that is. Anyway, let's move on. We're getting there. We're almost at an hour, and I'm almost finished already. How about that? Okay, so in about another hour goes by, and now I'm in my car, and I'm getting ready to drive to work. And my little phone goes off because it is 4:38 p.m. in Italy. And I have this photo for you. What a lovely little villa. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that a nice place to sit after a bad day? Sipping or drinking some fucking Chianti, watching the sunset. Yeah, that'd be great, right? A fire broke out Wednesday at a villa near Lake Como, Italy, owned by sanctioned Russian state TV host and Putin propagandist Vladimir Soloviev, and is reportedly being investigated as an act of arson. You don't say. The blaze at the property in Menaggio, which has since been extinguished, left limited damage. Local fire authorities had told the local news. Soloviev, who works for the Russian state-run Channel 1 network, owns 2 homes around Lake Como, worth a combined $8.7 million. The villa was currently under renovation at the time of the fire, which also involved burned tires found at the site. They're investigating it as a, quote, possible act of arson. Burned tires were found at the site. I'm sorry. If I was the Carbonieri and I saw that stuff, I'd just be like, I don't know what happened. You know what happened? Let's go get some lunch. I'm sorry. Yeah. Possible acts of arson. Okay. Sure. Let's move on. Let's see. About an hour later, and I'm going to take you back to the Ukraine. It's about 5:39-ish. This is typically after the curfews start to kick in the afternoon. This is also, I keep saying it like this, but this is also around the time that the Russian Air Force starts to warm up and, get into the groove of what it's going to do overnight and, scare the city into submission, or try to at least. Yeah. Let's see, I have a photo for you right here. Wait a minute. There you go. If you're wondering what that photo is, that is what's left of the Great Theater in Mariupol. The one that had the word children in Cyrillic in the parking lot at the front and back entrances that you could see from an aircraft 5 miles above the ground, and yet was still hit with a direct hit by a bomb and killed 300 people nearly instantly. That building. Yeah. Mariupol City Council on Wednesday accused Russian forces of relying on a mobile crematorium to cover up their war crimes in the southeast port city of Ukraine. Mariupol, which has been partially occupied for weeks, has been the target of one of the most brutal Russian offenses in Ukraine since the invasion began in February. The killers are covering their tracks, the city council said in several of their social media posts, adding that the Russians have set up mobile crematoriums. Russia's top leadership ordered the destruction of any evidence of crimes committed by its army in the city. Council added this in a translated statement, accusing Moscow of reacting to widespread condemnation over mass civilian killings in Bucha. Humanitarian access to the city has been blocked for weeks, with an estimated 160,000 remaining residents unable to evacuate and lacking access to electricity, heating, healthcare, and water. Of course, because they're trying to get this entire area killed. They don't want to save anything in Mariupol. The Russians don't need Mariupol. It's a port city, yes, but they've got all of the Crimea. They just need Mariupol to disappear so they can just keep driving their trucks across it from Russia straight to Crimea. They want this, quote, land bridge of safe territory. They don't need the town to be there. They just need control of the land that the town used to sit on. That's all this is about. It's a land grab. They're pushing west across the coast. They're attacking Odessa as of 2 days ago, deliberately to take away the last port city that the country has left under their control, to effectively starve out the country and make it a landlocked nation, forcing them to always answer to Russia for its imports. That's what this has always been about. He took a big chunk. There was a video, for you gun channels folks, there was a video that G-Webs did a long time ago about gun rights being a pie, and how the Gun Control Act and the National Firearms Act were big chunks of the pie being cut away and taken from you, right? That's what Russia's doing to Ukraine. In 2014, they cut a giant 6 o'clock section of the pie away from Ukraine in the form of Crimea. They took that away from them. Now they're trying to take Donbass, Luhansk, and Donetsk in the east. Now they're taking away 2, 3, and 4 o'clock of the pie. They're destroying Mariupol, which is 5 o'clock on the pie. And once all that's gone, they've attacked 7 and 8 o'clock of the pie, which is the last coastal city left, Odessa. And once that's gone, what's left? Kyiv, a bunch of farmland in the middle, and the Polish border. 9, 10, 11 o'clock. Not even 11 o'clock, because that's always under threat by Belarus. 12 o'clock is on the border with Russia. So is 1 and 2 o'clock. There's going to be nothing left. That's the end game. They're just circling around and cutting off chunks. That's what this is always about. They're not brothers and sisters of Russia. They've always just been an obstacle. And if they can't bring him to heel, they'll just kill him. That's all it is. Let's move on. Alright, so now, about another hour or so passes by, but I'm taking you back to New York City. So it's about 12:40 p.m. post-lunchtime, New York City. And I have this photo here for you. That is, I believe, a street view of the remnants of Bucha. NATO on Wednesday said it is bracing for a major offensive by Russian forces in eastern Ukraine just 1 week after Moscow said it would withdraw forces from around the capital. We see that Russia is moving forces out of the north to reinforce them, to resupply them, to rearm them, and then to move them into the east, where they're expecting a major offensive. This came from Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. You know, the guy who looks like he should be selling Volvos. this is that part that I was describing to you yesterday as an end around, which is they're retreating. They're doing a tactical retreat back into Belarus. So they're heading north. What was it northwest and north and northeast in a tactical retreat? Then they're going to regroup. They're going to rearm. They're going to get, new boots and new magazines of ammo and new packs of Russian cigarettes that taste like fermented dog shit. I've had Russian cigarettes. They're not the greatest. And then they're going to take a 3-hour tour going back across the east into Russian territory and then hooking back around south. And then they're going to re-enter in the Donbass region. They're going to reinforce that flank. And then they're going to push them from there all the way west until they get back to Odessa. That's the safe. It's a long way around, but they're in mostly friendly territory the entire time. That gives them plenty of time to hack out the deserters and execute the traitors and all that. And by the time they push back into Ukraine, it's going to be the diehards. It's going to be, what was the name of that military in Helsing? The Millennium Group, right? It's going to be those guys, the diehards, the ghouls and the zombies, essentially. Because what's going to be left of those people, there's no humanity left in them. They're just monsters at that point. Are you offended? You should be. So, let's see. President Putin's aim is to try to control the whole of Donbass and to establish his land bridge. The NATO chief said security officials have not seen any indication that Russian President Vladimir Putin has changed his ambitions to control all of Ukraine, despite claims from Moscow that it would divert troops amid peace talks with Kyiv. Russian negotiators said last week that the Kremlin would move soldiers from Kyiv and the northern city of Chernihiv to increase mutual trust. What utter bullshit. But following the removal of Russian troops from Bucha, a suburb of Kyiv, hundreds of civilians were reported to have been found lying dead in the streets, some appearing to have been executed with their hands bound. I showed you the pictures. I even showed you the satellite photos. They were there for weeks, which is why their skin had turned to leather, and which is why they were turning into living mummies on the ground. You saw the photos. I showed you the photos. Let's move on. Let's see. So about 2 hours had gone by. And it's 2:45 in D.C. President Biden announced sanctions targeting Russian President Vladimir Putin's daughters Wednesday as part of punishments related to alleged war crimes in Ukraine. The sanctions will hit Miria Putina and Katerina Tikhonova. That's his two daughters. They're both adults. As well as Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, the wife and children of Foreign Minister Sergei Lapdog, and I said lapdog, and members of Russia's Security Council, including former President and Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, who is just a fucking puppet. The penalties cut off all of Putin's family members from U.S. financial systems and freezes any assets they hold in America. Now, Scott and I talked about this the other day, or today, and if you didn't notice, every person has a virtue. They live by a virtue, right? And if you haven't noticed, mine is justice or injustice. Vengeance for injustice, I guess you could call it. But that is part of justice, isn't it? And mine is justice. And I've seen the stories, and I've seen the pictures, and I've heard the interviews, and I've seen the women, and I've seen the dead bodies of the women who didn't survive their ordeal. of rape and torture and execution. And I thought, can't we just hand over Putin's daughters to a bunch of angry Ukrainian soldiers and just, I don't know, see what happens? That's justice, isn't it? Maybe not. Maybe that's too harsh. But then again, I'm an eye for an eye kind of motherfucker, so it is what it is. All right, so moving on. And for me, it is the last story of the day. But I didn't call it the story of the day. No. Today, I'm going to give you what I call the insult of the day. Because hearing this and seeing this is insulting. If you're a serviceman, if you're an American, whatever, you should be offended. You should be insulted. And I'm going to give you the picture of a man who I call Captain Sundown. Because it doesn't look like he's saluting anybody. It looks like he's holding his temple to suppress a headache going, where am I again? President Biden joked about the possibility of the Russian invasion of Ukraine to expand to directly involve the U.S. military on Wednesday, telling fellow union workers, if I've got to go to war, I'm going with you guys. What? Biden made the statement during an address to union workers at the North American Building Trades Unions Legislative Conference Wednesday. Biden opened his speech with a lengthy section addressing new sanctions against Russia. This fight is far from over, he says. Here's the point. This war could continue for a long time. But the United States will continue to stand with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom. And by the way, if I've got to go to war, I'm going with you guys. I mean it. What?
Is he talking about, we're gonna, draft you and you're gonna...
He was talking to union workers for buildings. North American building trade unions. Not even soldiers. Biden's statement comes after months of he and other administration officials stating that the U.S. will not deploy troops to Ukraine. The U.S. military has limited its deployments to nearby NATO countries. Yeah, it has. We've got almost 200,000 soldiers amassed on the eastern flank. Would you call that limited deployment? I don't think so. I call that a surge. Anyway, he warned Russian President Vladimir Putin that invasion of one of those countries would mean a direct war with the U.S. Wow, real tough talk, Joe. Biden has said that avoiding direct war with Russia is a top priority, arguing that any engagement between the U.S. and Russian forces could result in a third world war. Could? I want to be clear. We will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full might of a united and galvanized NATO. But we will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III, and something we must strive to prevent. The Russian invasion in Ukraine has already lasted far longer than U.S. military officials initially predicted. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, told Congress in an early February closed session that Kyiv could fall within just 72 hours of a Russian invasion. However, he offered a new prediction during testimony yesterday, saying that the war will last for years for sure. What an idiot. Never trust a man who's got bags under his eyes that look like nut sacks, first of all. Like George Soros, for instance. This man is an idiot. His staff is full of idiots. And they are leading us into ruin. First it was with energy. Next it'll be with finances. Last it'll be with our military. And our national security. Just look at the fucking border. Did you know Title 42 is about to expire? Do you know that they're predicting 2 million illegal criminal immigrants in the next 4 months because of it. 2 million. Where do you think they're going to go? Where are we going to put them? Don't forget to vote
Well,
Democrat in November. I mean, if you love these policies, don't forget to vote Democrat in November.
according to a new program just put into place by the governor of Texas,
Yes, I
they're
know where
gonna
you're
be
going with this.
they are going to be bused to Washington D.C.
I think they should be bused straight to Nancy Pelosi's vineyard. Plenty of space.
How about yeah? Well, D.C. No, now you want to fucking create problems? Well, we're going to give you those problems.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We should send them to D.C. We should send them to San Francisco. They can hang
Democrat,
out. They can hang
controlled
out in
areas.
London, Mayor London Breed's backyard. Sure, we should do that. We should absolutely do that. Better yet, remember we were talking the other day about service ensures citizenship?
Yep.
We should just draft everyone who comes across the border.
There was a program that you could do that.
Yeah, George was part of it. George was part of that, by the way. Once upon a time.
Yeah.
He was drafted right out of the Mexican military academy in the town he grew up in. He was promised
Oh,
many
no.
things.
This one was literally like if you were an Afghani and you wanted to serve in the U.S. military, you would get citizenship.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that program too. But yeah, just, for intimate reference, George was definitely part of a similar program. He was promised citizenship for him and his sister. That's why they're both here.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer allowed to go back to his own country, though. They're hunting for him. They're looking for him. They harass his mother, who still lives there.
Considered a traitor.
He was considered a traitor because he assisted the South American drug wars, which started in southern Mexico. Unbeknownst to the Mexican military and the government. They were pissed. He served in the same union my friend's older brother did. That's the only reason why I know the stories are true. Because when I was a kid, I got the stories from my friend's older brother when he came home. And then later on, when I went to work and I met George, his stories were exactly the same as my friend's brother Brian. They were the same exact stories. And then the craziest thing was, George pulls out a unit photo, and he was like, "This guy's dead. This guy's dead. This guy's dead. This guy lives somewhere here in Houston." I was like, "I know that guy." He goes, "What?" And I was like, "I know that guy. That's my friend's older brother." They were in the same unit together. So that makes sense why all the stories lined up. I'm like, holy shit, it was true. All of it was true. Anyway. Let me just quickly look and see if there were any updates. Just in case. And the answer to that is not really. There was one story that came out which I wasn't going to really cover, but the Boston Marathon has banned all runners that reside in either Russia or Belarus. Okay. Why don't you start banning Leah Thomas too while you're at it? Or is that too risque? Anyway.
Oh,
Not
that
in
reminds me
Massachusetts,
of
they won't.
an association like banned like Russian blue cats from competing in their.
Russian blues are evil to begin with.
Let's just round up all the Russian blue cats and send them to China for their cat festival. Anyway.
Or Korea.
No, they're
Send them all to North Korea.
they're dog people.
Oh no,
They're dog people, but in the wrong way. I'm only half offended, by the way. Anyway, I'm going to be a man of my word, and I'm going to say that I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. Because I managed to get this under 2 hours for once. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you who did watch. Chat was a little pokey today, but I suspect that everyone had things to do. Or maybe you were just bored of the war. I don't know. And also, I'd like to thank my panelists for being here. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. I do have other things planned. It's just this show consumes a lot of my free time, and I will continue to do them because I think it's important. This was the War Room. This was day 42. We'll be back tomorrow for day 43. Hopefully there will be less and less stories because the war will actually wind down. But I don't think so, because war never changes. Slava Ukraini, and we'll see you tomorrow.